This is Frankie Lynch, Saturn Girl. Please, please, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me what you think below. I want to see your comments, and it really helps out with the algorithm. But this is part 2 in my Synastry series. We're going to be talking about specific synastry aspects over the course of this series of videos. So the one we're focusing on today is Saturn in hard aspect to Venus. So that includes the square, the opposition, and yes, even the conjunction. So let's take a look here and see what we can glean. Well, number one, let me remind you what synastry is. So synastry is where we take two people's natal charts and we compare them to see how they interact. So that means we look at aspects between planets in one chart to the other, and where one person's planets fall in the other person's houses. See? So anyway, that also entails looking at the chart in two ways. Number one, the modern psychological way, in which planets and points represent interior parts of ourselves or facets of our psychology. And we look at it from the ancient or more material perspective, where planets and houses represent literal people, places, and things in our lives. So we have to interpret the chart both ways because relationships entail the psychological facet as well as the outer ones. Remember, like I said in the last video, relationships are like psychological collisions. Well, let's dig into it now. Just to reiterate, what is Saturn? He's control, delay, expectations, rules, boundaries, melancholy, and our sense of seclusion. Remember, this is sort of interior parts of ourselves. Having Saturn aspects in synastry is not bad, as I frequently say. It holds people together, can create longevity. Now, Venus, on the other hand, she's how we relate to other people, not just romantically, but in general. So she's also our social nature, love, desire, what we like, our taste in music, clothes, art, painting, whatever, tagging, if you're into that sort of thing. And she represents how we loved and how we want to be loved. So when we see Saturn and Venus come together in a hard aspect, that is a square, opposition, or even a conjunction, we'll see some interesting things. Well, number one, oppositions are probably the hardest aspect. I mean, not probably, they are. They were considered to be in the nature of Saturn in ancient astrology. And Saturn was the most malefic planet, and Mars was next. Therefore, squares were said to be in the nature of Mars. So yes, it's also a difficult aspect, but just less so. Oppositions being in the nature of Saturn, they're more protracted, long-lasting obstacles and difficulties. Saturn draws things out over a period of time. Whereas Mars, right, the squares in the nature of Mars are quicker conflicts. They're things that erupt a bit more. So that's why they're considered less malefic, because they don't take as long. Well, now how about conjunctions? Conjunctions weren't traditionally considered an aspect because aspects were theoretically the line of sight between one planet and another. There was the idea of witnessing or testimony. We won't get into all that theory, but suffice it to say that conjunctions are more like a blending of the two planets. Although when it comes to malefics, or Saturn in particular, Saturn will usually overpower Venus or the other planet in general. So oppositions often indicate a struggle for dominance between two planets. Someone is trying to fuck the other in a way, I mean, that's more with the squares and superior squares, but you see what I'm saying? It's a struggle for supremacy. Now, conjunctions are not that way so much. Conjunctions are not necessarily malefic, but with the Malefic, that influence is there. So we often see the Saturn person imposing control, dominance, or limitations on Venus. This doesn't only get stifling, but can be downright creepy. Having someone tell you what to do, where to go, how to dress. Don't tell me what to say, and don't tell me what to do. Oh, wait, no. It's don't tell me what to do, don't tell me what to say, and if I go out with you, don't put me on display. Although I do like being put on display, so. But, Leo 7th house things. So anyway, Saturn gets jealous too. And he even gets uncomfortable with Venus being social at all, like even going out with friends. Where are you going? Where are you going? Who are you going there with? What are you going to be doing? What time are you going to be home? Like, dude, she's not a teenager. You're not her dad. But sometimes people like that sort of dynamic, Well, squares, like I said, are often quicker conflicts. And so you might see, rather than that drawn out, protracted thing, it's like circumstantial. Well, where are you going tonight? What are you doing tonight? As opposed to this wider, more pervasive quality of the relationship. Now, this can also lead Venus in the relationship to getting bored, to being unsatisfied, unfulfilled. And what does she do then? She starts looking around at what other options she has. And this can, again, exacerbate Saturn's jealousy. But it's not always that bad, The conjunction could be more positive. A couple that stays together, no matter what. Sometimes they just can't break up, even though they want to. Just out of circumstances. Maybe it's finances. They can't be alone financially. Or maybe it has something to do with the kids or some other circumstance. But that can be confining and, suffocating. But there's positive sides to it too. It can indicate a couple who likes space and to be alone. They're not a very social couple. They don't have a lot of friends. Or it can indicate a couple who share a business together or run some enterprise together. Something that requires structure and expectations. These hard aspects, even the square and opposition, can work in other circumstances, though. Where do we see them? Well, guru-chela relationships, which are like teacher-student type things. Or kink relationships, which can have a similar dynamic. The opposition between Saturn and Venus can especially lend itself well to this. Dominance and submission relationships, because there is that protracted dynamic, right? That persistent long-term relationship between Saturn and Venus, where Venus sort of willingly accepts Saturn as an authority figure or whatever. I've had this in several relationships, and they were all kink relationships, so there you go. The other thing, too, is the square. It's just a little bit less malefic. It has similar sort of things, but like I said, it's more circumstantial. Where are you going? What are you doing? Who you're going with? But an abundance of those over a period of time can also lead to breakup. One or both people feeling stifled or insecure. So, the conjunction is more harmonious, as we already talked about. And these can also show mutual dedication and respect, which is what Saturn sort of needs, right? That sense of dedication. There are Venus types that need the same thing too. But you understand it's always a compromise. So you'll see these aspects in long-term relationships, marriages, but also marriages you can't escape out of necessity for some reason. It's often money or children. So, like I said, these are hard aspects. They're not easy to have in synastry. They are challenging. We don't like seeing these things in a synastry chart, do we? But any aspect can work, provided that both people sincerely love each other, that both people sincerely want it to work, and that they can both be honest with each other. It's not a death sentence. Not even the worst malefic aspects are a death sentence. I've seen happily married older people with Mars opposite Pluto, right? Or even Saturn's opposite Mars. So don't let this be an excuse just to bow out either. Although if you notice that a relationship is is not good for you, is causing you more pain and stress in your life than it is fulfilling, then you seriously do need to reevaluate whether you should be in it or not. So now, communication is key for any of these things working. So just remember what Saturn needs. Saturn needs, well, Venus needs to remember that Saturn needs reassurance, consistency, and devotion, while Saturn needs to remember that Venus needs warmth, enjoyment, and spontaneity. She needs fun and pleasure. I've been the Venus person several times in this, and believe me, it can be stifling. And all you want is the reciprocity. You want someone to be able to share in the enjoyment of life with you. I've also been the Saturn person, and that can be really insecure. On the same token, you're holding some position of authority or setting rules or being a caretaker. In kink relationships, you'll often see this in caretaker relationships. One person is more dominant or whatever, but it's the same sort of dynamic where one person is feeling cared by the other. So if Saturn can't deliver the warmth along with the structure, it won't work. If Venus can't deliver the devotion along with the love and spontaneity, it won't work. So this is where communication comes in. And I always say, communication is sexy. So I hope this is useful and informative for some of you folks. We're going to do a lot more of these videos, a fucking shitload. So get ready and you better watch or else I'm going to haunt your dreams, which you may or may not like. But anyway, as I said before, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, tell your friends, and watch, because you're going to learn a lot from this. And you'll be able to navigate these situations with a little bit more wisdom. I love you very much, and have a wonderful whatever you're having. Transmission.